Welcome to Leadership for Startups, where we help entrepreneurs and leaders build businesses that grow and flourish. My name is Toyo Shimbi, your host, and welcome to episode 6. My guest today is David Mudrick, an entrepreneur since his teenage years, a qualified civil engineer, and he has worked for the federal government in America, and then started his own business and made the 500 Inc. list. He's currently running his own business, has been doing this for 30 years, has got a lot of wisdom to share with us. Dave, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Toy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, really looking forward to this interview. Now, Dave, you're based in Prescott, Arizona, a wonderful place. Tell us a bit about Prescott, Arizona.
Well, a lot of people hear about Arizona in the United States being in the desert. They kind of know of Phoenix, which is super hot. Can be up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer down there.
Yeah.
But we're actually up in the mountains here. So my house has pine trees around it. So we're at 5,000 feet in elevation.
Oh.
So we get some snow in the winter, but it's still kind of mild. So it's not really what people think of when they hear Arizona.
Now you're making us jealous, huh? So, obviously our audience will want to know a bit more about you. So you want to share with us a bit about your own background and a bit about your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, I think looking back, I didn't realize that I was an entrepreneur as a kid. Mm-hmm. I asked my dad for some money and he said, well, you can go get a job if you need money. So I guess that was my start of being an entrepreneur. So as a kid, maybe 14, 15 years old, you couldn't have a job, a regular job till you were 16, working for a company. So I started my grass cutting business, and I used to clean windows for the stores in our town and sweep their carpets, or, odd jobs kind of. So I guess that was my start of being an entrepreneur.
Oh, wow. And then you studied civil engineering. So you want to tell us a bit about your experience in that area first?
I think I kind of got misdirected, I think, by not really my parents, more the schools and the guidance counselors. And, I had a passion. I wanted to be an astronomer. I really loved astronomy and searching for the unknown. And everyone said, well, you're not going to make any money doing that. It's research grants. You're going to be out of work half the time. And then, you take an aptitude test and they said, well, you're really good at math and science. You should be an engineer. And I think at the time I was like, I don't even know what an engineer is. I think, is that the guy that drives the train? The next thing I know, I'm in college being an engineer. And, I enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. But working for the federal government was kind of an oppressive job. They just didn't want any creativity. They didn't really want you to try to do better at your job. They just wanted you to follow the rules, kind of, which was the opposite of being an entrepreneur. And I still had that kind of spirit of, I want to do my own thing. So although I enjoyed the civil engineering, and I was for 10 years, I was in dam safety inspection. So we had 700 dams in the western United States, and we were responsible for the safety on those. So it was a challenging job. It was interesting, reviewing data and analyzing performance of dams to make sure they were safe. But I guess the good thing that kind of got me back into being an entrepreneur was I got to travel a lot, like all the western United States, all the national parks. We did some work for national parks and Bureau of Indian Affairs here. So I got to go to a lot of cool remote places, fly helicopters into the backcountry. And my hobby was photography. So I had, it was negatives back then before the digital photography.
Yeah, the good old print it out.
Yeah. And so I had all this photography, and I started a business out of my house, out of my basement, where I would sell souvenirs, bookmarks, keychains, and magnets with my photography on it.
Oh, wow. It's a typical basement story of every startup, isn't it?
Yeah. The overhead is really good when you're in your house. It's super low.
Yeah. So, many of our audience, most likely are either running their own company, or even some people most likely might be thinking of making that transition. So obviously you've got that experience of making that transition. What advice would you give somebody who is thinking? Because what was it for you that made you know that now is the time to shift? Let's start there, actually.
Well, I think you hear a lot about people saying that entrepreneurs are risk takers. And at least for me, it was the opposite of that. I said, okay, well, I've got my job. It was 40 hours a week. You really didn't have to work any extra for the government. So I can work my second 40 hours a week at home, right, and build this thing up. So I was very cautious, really. I built up the business. I think the last year I worked for the government, I had maybe like 100,000 in sales out of my house,
Wow.
right? And I had built, but back then I could make it was 50% profit. I had no overhead, right?
Wow.
And I was making the same amount. So I built it till I was making the same amount as I was at the government. And then I felt pretty safe to leave. But I also was super cautious, and I cashed in like all my retirement at the government. I paid off my house. So I was debt free. I had no house payment. I had no car payment. And I knew once I moved into a location with overhead, it was going to be a different story. I didn't realize how bad it was going to be, and that I could make almost nothing the next year. It was just, so the first year was a little tough, but being so conservative on not having to make a lot of profit that first year really saved me, gave me a chance to kind of figure it out.
Wow. So tell us about the business that you started. What was so unique about this business?
Well, I think it was just my photography, really, and that's what sold it. I don't think the products were not anything unique. I mean, they were bookmarks and keychains, just kind of common items you would find in a souvenir store. But I think it was the quality of the photography, and I was very, I guess maybe that comes from being an engineer too. You tend to be very particular, very perfect and precise because you're dealing with people's lives. I also designed like highway bridges and, things where safety was the utmost of importance. And I think I carried that over into my photography. Like I really looked at every little detail and every aspect of the photo when I took them to make them, as good as I could.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And it seems that you were able to crank out a lot of sales while you were working. So, I mean, what was it like for you in the additional 40 hours that you were spending, prior to leaving? How did you spend your time? How did you make it work?
Well, when you're a one-man show, you're pretty much doing everything,
Yeah.
So you're taking photos. I had a dark room, so I'm developing the film. I'm printing the photos. I'm die cutting them. I'm putting it into products. I'm returning phone calls to the people that would call me during the day. I couldn't, and this is before cell phones, or it was a little tougher. There wasn't any technology to really help you. So I'd have to return people's calls when I got home, end of the day, 4:00, try to catch people. And I think probably the thing that helped me a lot was just realizing I wasn't going to be able to do it all myself. And I hired some sales group out of the city I was in. And they had like a showroom and a gift mart there. And all of a sudden that's what took off. Like some of the reps would put in like 100 racks into their state, like into Montana or whatever. And then I realized, whoa, I really have something here that people want to buy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to hear that you pulled other people in. So based on this now, obviously you've got over 30 years experience in this. So what are some skills that you think an entrepreneur needs, to have in the early days in their startup venture?
Well, I would say persistence is a
Mm.
huge one because, um, I mean, looking back, I kind of I wonder how I even got through the first 10 years because when I left, I had 100,000 in sales. It took me 10 years to get to 1 million in sales.
Wow.
And it was a struggle. It was
Yeah.
just not easy, I mean, looking back, but I think the reason that I stayed in was I didn't have a plan B. I
Mm.
think it was good to be all in. Like, this is what I'm
Mm.
doing. And
Mm.
I was going to make it work. And somehow that just gave me the, extra tenacity, I guess, to go, well, I don't have a choice. Like, I'm going to figure this out. Uh,
Mm.
and that was a long 10 years. And I wasn't making very much money. I never made as much as I had when I was working at the government.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I guess it really was my passion. It was really
Mm.
something I wanted to do. And even going back to when you say, how did I do that second 40 hours? It's the first 40 that I didn't like, you know? The first 40 was like working for someone else, doing
Yeah.
something that uh, just, it was a job. And then I couldn't wait to get home,
Mm.
and I loved the holidays and long weekends. And I was like, oh, I have more time to work on the business. So, I would say if you're not really, you have to find something that you really are passionate about, that it really is not going to feel like work.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of sort of debate around this follow your passion, perspective. I mean, what's your overall thought of that? Do you think that that's true in every situation? As an entrepreneur, just follow your passion. What's your thoughts?
Yes, if I had to go back and do it again, I actually wouldn't even have probably been an entrepreneur. I would have followed the astronomy and searching for the unknown and
Okay.
discovering what's out in the universe. That's really it's always kind of been my real passion.
Hmm.
And that would not have been work for me. I've always had a telescope. I would stay up all night and look at the stars and take photographs through my telescope. And I think one thing that I would caution people to not let happen to them, and I think it happened to me. So
Mm.
I was passionate about like photography and the creativity and producing photographs. And when I went and did that on my own,
Mm.
somewhere along the way, I got hijacked into something I didn't want to do, which
Mm.
was running a business and meeting payroll and talking to
Mm.
bankers and
Mm.
worrying about lawyers. And all of a sudden, one day, I'm saying, well, this really sucks. I don't like
Mm.
this anymore.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't really know why. I guess reflecting now, it makes more sense to me.
Mm.
But, I started it as like a passion for photography and creativity. And it just, it's the nature of being an entrepreneur, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you have to do everything. But then at some point, a few years in, I wasn't taking photographs at all anymore. I
Mm.
was looking to buy them from somebody to license them to use on the products. And
Yeah.
so again, I sort of got hijacked by uh, something that I really wasn't anticipating, I guess.
Yeah, I get what you're saying because I mean, in on episode 4, I talked about the three sort of roles that on what happens in a business, that you have the innovator, and then you have the manager, and then you have the technician, and that the technician is a person who's very passionate about the work, and sometimes you end up turning it into a business, and then maybe you end up not necessarily doing the thing that you love because it's turned into a business. So is that what it was like for you, that it sort of changed what you ended up doing?
Yeah, and well, I mean, I guess it's a longer story. So I was just determined to make the thing successful, and I
Mm-hmm.
just kept pushing through. And I didn't realize what a toll it was taking on me personally, physically, in my relationships, everything, right? But I could see that I was getting some traction. And then, sales went from 1 million to 3, and 3 to 6, and 6 to 16.
Wow.
Um, so that's when we made the Inc. 500. And I, kind of felt for a little bit there like, wow, I'm kind of on top of the world. I just had
Mm.
that it took 10 years to get to 1 million in sales. And then it took 3 years to get to 16.
Wow.
And I think it went to my head a little like, oh,
Mm.
wow, this is easy, right? But then that was 2009, right? So we
Mm.
all know what happened to the world in
Yeah.
2009. So I
Yeah.
had everything going for me on the way up. And then on the way down, it was like the economy was against me. I
Mm.
had a super successful product that kind of like fell off the cliff right in
Mm.
the bad times. And then I think is when I started to realize, well, wait a second, I don't even really like what I'm doing that much.
Mm.
It's just running a business, and now it's tough, and I'm dealing with banks and debt, and I'm so far away from. I guess maybe the money and the success kind of blinded me to the fact that I wasn't really doing something I was passionate about.
Mm.
And then
Okay.
when it started to go bad, it was obvious. I'm like, well, wait, I don't even like this. And it's
Mm.
uh, very tough now. And I'm dealing with things that have nothing to do with my passion, the creativity, or, things that I originally um, wanted to do.
Yeah. Wow. So you've obviously got different phases of experience. So let's try and explore some of that. So it took you, you said 10 years before you got your first million. Maybe you can share with us some stories that you faced during those times, because I mean that's serious persistence. I mean, so I admire you for that, because that's like all in.
Well, maybe
So
stupidity looking back. I'm not
I
sure.
don't know. But let's hear some stories, because I'm sure that must have been a big learning curve in terms of shaping your character.
Well, yeah, and I think the reason I couldn't break through where I always thought, oh, well, I get the next 100,000 in sales, that'll be
Mm,
good. Well, no, then I needed to hire some people, and then I needed a bigger place, and then so it just seemed very tough to make any progress. And the other thing I guess that helped me was um, actually realizing that, look, I can't stay in this business with photography. It's too expensive to license the photos back then. I
hmm.
need another direction.
Okay.
So what I did was I saw an ad in a magazine for a laser machine. It was like $25,000. And I said to my wife at that time, I need to buy this machine. And she said, are you crazy? I mean, what are you going to do with it? And I said,
Mm,
I don't know, but it's new technology. It's super cool. I know I can make something with it.
mm,
So I bought this machine and I started taking my photographs and having like a graphic artist draw black and white scenes of those photographs. And
okay.
then I would laser engrave those onto wood products like pen
Wow.
sets and different things. And the first year, so I've got this little laser that can make like not much product. And
Mhm.
one of my first orders is like 3,000 pen sets from like a national park.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa, wait a
This
second,
is
I got
big.
something here.
Yeah.
like, so that kind of directed the business into a whole new area.
Yeah.
And now I wasn't limited by having photographs of the places that I needed to sell to.
Mm,
I could just get a photo online and have someone do a pen and ink drawing of that, if it was a national park or if it was a museum or dinosaur, whatever the people wanted, and
yeah.
I could engrave that. So that was a big like aha moment for me. Like, wow, okay, I have a different direction, and that's
Yeah.
really I think what started to, I was stuck in here's what I'm doing, and it just
Yeah.
wasn't working that well.
Okay.
So I had
Okay.
to, I guess I
So
maybe out of desperation, it sort of launched me into
a,
a different area.
Yeah. So, so let's say, for instance, the Dave of today met the Dave during those 10 years, let's just say in year 7, right? What advice would you give him from what you now know? Or yeah, even if it was year 3, because I mean, let's not take it that long, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what advice? Okay. So 2 years, it's not really picking up the way you think. The Dave of today, who maybe you are actually speaking of a Dave of 2-3 years in, what advice would you give him?
Well, I think what I've learned was, so I was extremely left brain thinking, logical, rational. That's what engineers do, right? It all has to be proven out on paper. I was not in touch with my gut feelings, intuition. I don't know. Someone once said something to me about having a soul, and I said, I don't even know that I have one. I don't know what that is.
You can't say that.
And I think looking back, I was just so driven to do something, but I was so caught up in my own mind and my own thinking. And, the monkey brain was just 100% going all the time. And I maybe lucked into finding something different to do that was successful. And now I've kind of transformed into a different kind of a person, like a totally different person, where, I do meditation and I reflect on what's going well and what's not and why. And I'm trying to get in touch with, that intuition and that gut feeling. And it's very hard when for many years you're just thought to, it's got to be on a spreadsheet. It's got to be a number. It's got to be something I can analyze.
Okay.
So it's taken me a while here to even listen to myself, to listen to those.
Yeah.
And so I think if I was able to do that back in those, that's what I would say. I would tell that young David, you need to meditate. You need to go on walks once in a while. You need to get out in nature. You need to not be 24/7 driven to trying to solve that problem, because sometimes you're just beating your head against the wall. And now I can get away and think about things, and I go, oh wait, kind of look at the big picture, look at your own thoughts, and why are you feeling the way you are, and is there a solution that you're not considering? So
that's very powerful. That's something that I've realized as well, which is like a daily reflection of asking yourself certain questions. They just help you first of all realign to your purpose, but also open you up to being aware of what's going on. And I guess from what you shared, your stories that you did a pivot in terms of looking at a different avenue of getting your business up and running. So when you then pivoted and then things started to get successful, what were some of the things that you learned in that period of growing from 1 million to 3 million to then up to 16? What were some of your key learns during that phase?
Well, looking back, it was such an uphill curve. It was kind of crazy. I don't know at the time. I didn't even know what was going on. I just had orders coming in like more and more. And my big problem was, where do I get the capital? How do I? So here's the other thing that happened. So, right, you go into business, and I said, okay, I want to have no debt. So I'm in this huge growth curve, and on paper, I'm making all this money. And then the year that we made the Inc. 500 and I've got all these sales, I'm showing all this profit on paper, and I owe $2 million in tax. Wow. And I'm like, I don't have that. Like, because when your sales are doubling 2 or 3 years in a row, right? Your accounts receivables doubling, your inventory's doubling. So all those sales, all the profits were back in the business. And now I've got on paper a huge profit, and I owe all this tax and I don't have any money to pay the tax. So I've got to borrow a couple of
Wow.
$1,000,000. So I have more, I'm supposedly successful and this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
wonderful. And I have more debt than I've ever had in my life. And that was like, wow, like not having an engineering background, you
Mm,
don't take accounting courses, you don't take business
yeah.
courses. It's just like, I mean, I understand it all now, but at the
Mm,
time it was kind of like a shock to me. Like, what did I get myself into? Why
into.
is this so good? Like, I'm broke.
Yeah. And
So,
it's kind of like it's a conundrum, isn't it? Where on paper things, and this is the thing, which is especially in today's world, things can happen quite rapidly, in terms of things just scaling up. So I'm guessing that you're saying that this was successful, but there were other things that were draining the business. Is that right?
yeah, yeah, things that I really didn't anticipate. I remember talking to my accountant and
Mm.
telling him about it, and he's like, "Well, of course." He goes, "Yeah, all your," because I even when I went to him at the end of the year to do taxes, I go, "I don't think this is right." I said, "I think someone's stealing money from me." I go, "This can't be." He goes, "Well, it's very simple. Look at your balance sheet." He goes, "Look where your money is. It's in receivables and inventory." And he goes, "There's your profit." I'm like, wow, like, how do I get that back? And funny thing is, he said, "Well, you need to have a couple of bad years." And he said, "All that cash will
Wow.
come back to you." And I was like, "Well, I don't think I want that." Well,
Yeah.
actually, that's what happened, 2009.
Yeah.
And then, so, okay, yeah, good news. Cash is coming back out. I don't need as
Yeah.
much inventory, and my receivables are way down. But
Mm.
now I've got a company that can't support the infrastructure that I have and all the
Mm.
people. And so then in 1 year, no, was it 2 years?
Mm.
Our sales went from 16 million back down to 8.
Wow.
So that was like, it was such a blur almost at the time. I'm like,
Mm.
wait, by the time I'm even figuring out the first problem, which is
Mm.
how to handle all this growth and where do I get all the capital, to like, wait, what happened to all the growth? And now I don't need
Wow.
capital, but in a bad way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um,
Mm.
learning, I don't know what I don't know what I learned from that.
Like, is there anything that you would have done different now that you've experienced? Let's say you're in a similar situation and it's about to happen again. The fact that you've gone through this, what would you do different in terms of the sales and the inventory?
Well, it's, I know people will say this, that,
Hmm.
not all sales are good sales and that maybe you should
Okay.
slow your growth. When you've tried for so many years to increase sales, that's very hard for me to go back and say, well, we should have limited sales. I don't know. I can't do that. I think what I would do at this point, if I saw that coming, I would have got a partner, venture capital. I would have got
Okay.
someone else involved, and it was too important for me to keep 100% ownership of the business. Looking
Okay.
back, I would have been better off with someone else, probably that was maybe better than me on the
Hmm.
financial side, which wouldn't have
Okay.
been hard. That would have probably been like anyone.
Mm.
But somebody to, and even if it was just venture capital that they put into the business and they had an ownership, but they would have had some people who were helping me look at
Yeah.
that big picture and understand where I'm going. And
Yeah.
giving up, well, I don't know, let's say I had to give up 20%, third of the business or something. I think we could have grown it much bigger, and
Okay.
I would have had a smaller percentage, but of a bigger
But
pie.
bigger pie. Yeah.
Yeah.
That does seem to be one of the areas that people sometimes aren't open to explore, which is that getting a team around you to think about it, is something that sometimes is a better option, you know. But let's now move forward now. So your business is stabilized, right? But now your all this experience has taken you into a different realm of thinking about entrepreneurship. So do you want to talk to us about what your current sort of thinking is around entrepreneurship and making money, etc.?
Well, I think, I'll have to tell you how I got a little bit to this point. So then the business is somewhat stabilized now, and we had the similar sales for almost 3 years in a row. But it just wasn't exciting to me anymore. It was turning into like a job. It wasn't, I really was not passionate about it anymore. I had a series of personal things that happened for 2 or 3 years. Just, I always joked that there was a black cloud hanging over us, and just my wife got extremely ill, and I had some business financing that was very close to closing. It fell through like 2 weeks before it was supposed to close. I lost a bunch of key people. We had toxic mold in our house. We had to evacuate our house. That's what caused my wife to get so ill. And then I was ill with it. We didn't know at the time that this was down in the crawl space, this toxic mold. And so we had to move, basically evacuate our house. Very challenging to find another place to live. We had a bunch of pets, and we had to move twice in a year. Wow. And then I fell off a ladder and broke my foot. So at some point about a year ago, I was like, I don't understand. Why am I even doing this? This isn't, I don't want to be here even. This is, I kind of lost my desire to really go on. And it was on the outside. Everyone is looking like, oh, you're successful and you've got a business and, you've got a cool house and a car. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter anymore. So, I guess the turning point for me, it was kind of at the bottom and seriously considering whether I just wanted to even go on anymore. And I asked my wife, like, well, what should I do? What would you do? And she's a very spiritual person. That's why we got along so well. I think we were opposite. She's like totally right brain and I was totally left brain. And, and all the stuff she said, I hate to say this, but in some ways I kind of just humored her and went along, but I didn't really believe in some of the thoughts and thinking she had about, just spirituality, I guess. I don't really like that word, but I don't know what else to use. So she said, well, I think you should go see this Cherokee medicine woman here that's helped her. And I said, okay, well, I don't know. I got nothing to lose at this point. I'm like a miserable person. So I went to see her and she did a little ceremony, some drums and chanting and things. And I thought, okay, I don't know what this is going to do anything. But when I came out of there, I felt better. And driving back to work, I'm looking out the window and I'm going, wow, the sky is really blue. And I'm looking at birds flying. I'm like, what happened to me? I thought this stuff was like silly, what did this woman do? How did she change me somehow? And that started my journey, I guess, into, wow, like, what else don't I know? Like, if this is something I would have just said was foo-foo silliness as an engineer, and this had some kind of a powerful effect on me. So I think that for sure was the defining point.
Wow, that's an interesting story in terms of discovering that there's more to life than just what we see. That's happened to me as well. So, a lot of times, there were a lot of things that you said there that I don't want to just overlook. I want to just talk about those dark moments that you shared, and appreciate you sharing that with us. If you were to look at some of the character qualities that you were able to grow in, what might if you were to give it a name, some of the things that you've grown in terms of character wise, what would you say you've grown in terms of character qualities?
Do you mean since I changed my thinking, or how?
Yes. Well, I mean, like for instance, obviously you persevered through those dark times, even though you did have some thoughts that were quite negative, but you still kept on. So what were some of the character qualities that you've been able to look back and think, wow, I've actually developed, even though I've gone through all this?
Well, I think it's changed my entire thinking about life, our existence here, what
Mm-hmm.
reality we're really in, and I think before I was really uh, kind of rational, logical, materialist. I consider myself an atheist for
Mm-hmm.
30 or 40 years. And I guess it was very closed-minded thinking, and I looked at the world as being very black and white. In engineering, it kind of is, right? Concrete's
Mm-hmm.
either strong enough to hold up this bridge or not. And it's like you
Mm-hmm.
really don't want someone uh, designing structures that have safety involved with gray thinking. Well, I think it'll be all right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
but but that's okay for your profession. But I think when you look at the whole world and your
Mm,
personal life and your relationships that way, it's not. It's like everyone knows that
mm,
it's obvious, but I was stuck in that, like looking at the world one way, and
mm,
I think what it did was just change my whole thinking to, well, wait a second, I didn't understand this. I was obviously wrong in the way
mm,
I was looking at everything and looking to the outside world. I was unhappy. Why?
mm.
Because the world wouldn't do what I wanted it to do, or
Do,
wasn't
yeah.
people weren't acting the way I wanted them to act. I was trying to control everything, control
Mm,
the external world, not realizing it was my problem,
mm,
not
mm,
realizing it was internal problems, and it was my own way of thinking about things that was really what took me down this dark path.
mm.
And I think it's Einstein made the quote that the most important thing a person needs to do is decide, is this a hostile universe or a friendly universe?
Yeah.
Well, and when you're in the depths and you think everything's going wrong, and I thought there was a black cloud hanging over me, there was
Mm,
a black cloud hanging over
yeah.
me,
Yeah.
and making that shift the other way is kind of mind blowing. Sometimes it's like amazing to me that,
Mm.
that it took me 62 years to figure this
To
out.
get that.
I wish I would have figured it out a lot earlier, but I
Mm.
guess better late than never. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so what advice would you give a young entrepreneur that, is in it at the moment, is thinking about the money? Um, what advice would you give in terms of somebody who is thinking about, yes, starting a business and is also just fixated on the money that they can make from it? Any thoughts on that?
yeah, I would not focus on the money at all. And back then, that's all I focused on was the money. And it was like a game, like how much can I make? How big can I build this? I guess what I've learned now is it's all about providing value for people. I mean, that's my favorite word today. If I have one word that's the
Mm,
most important uh, as an entrepreneur, as a spouse, as whatever position you're in, is value. What value can you provide to the other person?
mm,
If I can provide something of value, whether it's some advice, some guidance, some money to help someone build a business, if it's like that's going to come back and pay off with the
mm,
money, but you just shouldn't even think about the money. And I know when you're stuck in it, you got to make payroll next week. It's hard to think, but you have to keep forcing yourself to think that way. Like
yeah.
you will attract people to you to help you in your business. People
Mm,
will want to buy products from you
yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
providing some value to them. And the
Mm,
value doesn't necessarily have to be in the product or service. So I think it's important to disconnect those actually. How can I make your life better? How can I give you something? And you'll want to buy something from me. You'll want to do business with me. So if you're an honest person, if you're trustworthy, if you're dependable, if you're and you're providing some value, people want to be around you and they want to help you out. So I think you have to try to help them out first. What value can I give? And don't expect anything in return.
Yes, that's some really good advice there. A similar question, right? Which is advice that you would give to leaders and entrepreneurs that are starting their business. So what advice would you give a leader or an entrepreneur that's just about to start their business?
Well, the value side is important, but what I see a lot of people doing is spending too much time trying to perfect something, which I did too. I think you have to get revenue quickly. Okay. I guess if you see this all the time, that, I think we're misled by these giant companies, whether it's Uber and, they're multi-billion-dollar companies. It's Amazon. You're taking 20 years to never make a profit. Okay. So we see that. And when it's a good idea and there's venture capital behind it and people are just dumping money in, like Tesla, right? Like I think BMW sells more cars in 6 days than Tesla does in a year or something. And the values are similar. There's something wrong there. So we kind of see these stories and it looks like, well, I don't really need profits. But that's the 1 in 1,000, right? Companies. When you're the little guy and it's you, or it's you and your spouse, or it's you and a couple of other people that are trying to do something, I think you've got to get revenue quickly because it changes the game. Now I'm not out looking for money. Now I'm not dumping in all the capital I have. I'm not mortgaging my house. I'm not putting everything on credit cards. So I think that's very important. And just to sell something, even if it's not totally related to what you want to do, have some kind of revenue coming in. It changes the whole dynamic of it, and you're not in desperation. And now you've got some revenue coming in, and you've got money you can invest back in whatever your, ultimate dream is or your goal for the business.
Yeah. Well, a good friend of ours, Brian, said that it's not a business until you've sold something.
Well, I have a friend of mine who's a consultant, and I really like his saying. He says, it's not a sale until you get paid for it.
Until you get paid. And you know what? It's true. That is so true. That is so true. So we're going to come back to some of your new venture, but thinking about the future, it's interesting to hear your story and how trends of the future impacted your business. But when we think about looking forward, what are your thoughts on the future trends? What should we expect to see in the world of business, leadership, and entrepreneurship from your perspective?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges that I have right now, or that I see a lot of other business owners having, is the dynamics of the workforce has changed a lot. And I'm still trying to figure it out. Younger people are working for different reasons than I was. People were kind of appreciative of having a job. And now, a lot of people I know my age only have had 1 or 2 or 3 jobs.
That's right.
And I see so many applications come through here where, okay, you've been working 12 years and you've had 9 jobs, and the attitude has just changed. So I'm trying to figure out, how do you even motivate younger people, or what motivates them? I mean, we know some things that jobs are not their primary focus, it seems. And this is generalization. This is obviously not everyone, but it seems like they're more aware of like what the company's doing and the cause of the company and the mission of the company, and they want to be a part of something. They want to, I don't know if that comes from all the social media that I didn't have when I grew up, but they want to feel like they're part of a team or an effort or something. And so I think that's a challenge for anybody. I think if I was starting a business, that's easier because I can kind of build a team of people that think that way. But if I have something that's been around for a while and I've got a lot of people who, there's a kind of a conflict almost between the older people and the younger people and their values and how they think. So how do I get that all to work together? So I know other people that are friends of mine that have businesses are kind of struggling with the same things. And
so having a mission and a vision is important from your perspective.
Yeah, some people want to feel like they're part of something. Where is the company going? What are we doing? Are we doing some good in the world? Are we? There just seems to be a lot more emphasis in that. So, maybe it's actually easier now to lead a company if you're younger because you're thinking that way too, and you can attract other people. But you've already got 100 people and they're a whole range. That's I think my biggest challenge. And I'm trying to bring in some of the things that have transformed my life in the last year, my different ways of looking at the world and thinking. I'm trying to bring some of that into the business. We're doing some training. And I think just, I was really not a good leader. I never had any training in leading, and I just showed up and kind of did my job and figured everyone else would do theirs. And now I realize how important it is to be the leader and to have a direction and to inspire other people. And so I'm trying to take a lot more active role in that and kind of, I would say change the direction, maybe change the thinking of the company a little, because I need everyone to help us. It's challenging times right now in consumer goods, especially in the United States. So we've got all these tariffs, we're in this trade war with China, and it's when your cost is out of your control because they just want to throw 25% onto your cost of goods, you're like, okay, I can't do this myself. I need help. I need everybody here helping. So I think that's probably my biggest challenge right now.
Yeah. And you mentioned about leadership. So as a startup, how early should the entrepreneur ensure that they've got leadership training from your perspective?
Well, looking back, I think it's, one of the key factors for sure. And, when you're in the hard sciences, when you're in math and science related kinds of things, as far as your education, your background, you just don't get those skills, I mean, I avoided all the sociology, philosophy, psychology. I was like, wow, why do we have to take this stuff? I'm like here for math and science. And so we avoided. I wouldn't even read the books back then. I would get the Cliff Notes. I'm like, I'm not going to read those books. Well, now I would say that stuff is very important because I didn't have the skills to relate to other people. I always said, well, I don't even understand people. Like I understand concrete and steel and I can test.
Come on, Dave. You weren't that bad, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, if a laser was broken, I would much rather go fix the laser than if an employee had problems because I didn't know what to do. I didn't really understand that. So, if I had to go back, I would say, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they're focused in a product, an idea. They probably don't have a broad enough background or skill set for if they're going to really grow. They should have a little. You don't have to be an expert in anything, but you should have a lot of general knowledge about everything. And and I didn't. I was kind of stuck in this little box. So
wow, That's yeah. I mean, that's what we're trying to encourage, which is leadership is a skill set, and you can learn it, and it's slightly different to even the skill set of an entrepreneur who's getting a product off the ground, selling the product. But when it comes to the leadership part, that also involves another skill set, and that's what we encourage here. And I really appreciate all the things that you've shared with us. Obviously, based on this transition that's happened, do you want to share with us what you're now, one of the things that you are passionate about?
Well, in a strange sort of way, I'm back to being passionate about what I was as a kid, which was, at the time, it was exploration of the universe. What's really out there? What's going on? You know, who are we? Where are we? And where are we going? You know, the classic three questions I guess philosophers have been asking for, you know, thousands of years. So I guess me being open up to looking at, well, the same questions again, like, well, what's this all about? You know, where are we? What, how does it all work? I mean, what's consciousness? I've started a podcast called Evolution Network, and it's, my tagline is skills to create the future you desire. So it's basically, you know, humans are evolving here at a rapid pace. Technologies are evolving at a rapid pace, and it's hard to just keep up. And so I guess, you know, what I want to try to do is get people to look at reality and what's going on, and is there ways that they can be better in their personal performance, can they do meditation? Can they biohack? Can they make their health better? Can they kind of any kind of outside the box thinking? It can maybe get people to kind of wake up like I did and realize that you don't have to be trapped in this reality that you're not happy in, that you can create something else.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. And yeah, so that's Evolution Network. And that's on iTunes. And for our audience that are listening to this, we're going to put the link to that in the show notes. Dave, this has been fantastic. Really enjoyed having this conversation with you. I've got a few more questions before we finish. You mentioned about how in the future, I mean, things are changing rapidly. So I just want to get your own perspective in terms of the impact of artificial intelligence, for instance, in business and on society. What are your thoughts in terms of maybe things that we should be thinking about that's going to maybe also take another transition, just as the internet, for instance, has impacted everything that we do?
Yeah, I think, you know, I hear that word all the time, and I don't like the word artificial intelligence. I think intelligence is intelligence. I mean, what is intelligence? I mean, it used to be memorization. I mean, when I went to school, you got good grades if you could memorize everything. But you weren't allowed to have any notes in class, which I never understood. But that isn't important anymore. Like I have all the information of the world in my pocket on a phone, right? I don't really need to memorize anything. So I think the skills are changing, and I think it's right now what's important is analyzing data, because there's massive amounts of data around the world on everything, like too much data, and then problem solving. And those are the skills that I find that a lot of people don't seem to have. It's like, okay, well, we have, so information is not a problem anymore. We can get data on anything, but what do we do with it? How do we apply it to our business? How do we apply it to make decisions? And so whether computers can do that or whether we can do it in our brains, I mean, it's all problem solving, intuition. I mean, I'm not sure that artificial intelligence can have intuition or gut feelings, right? It can just crunch data.
Yeah.
So could it get smarter than us and get rid of us? Yeah, for sure. But I think that's the big challenge, is when you create this and people are saying, well, singularity could be within 20 years, 30 years. Everyone argues where that is. And when the artificial intelligence and the robots are smarter than us, what's going to happen? Well, I mean, if you program in the information, I don't think any of these machines will ever come to a conclusion that humans are really a good, are really right. I mean, well, look, we're destroying the planet with its resources. We have to eat food all the time. It's just their robots would be pretty simple. All they need is electricity, right? And I think it's
that's a scary thought.
interesting. Yeah. I guess the sci-fi movies, the robots take over a lot.
Exactly.
And I think that's possible. So I don't know. That's it's a tough, it's going that way.
It's going that way.
Going that way. And you're not everyone is going to stop and think about it and think about the ramifications to society of the planet. So it's just going to happen is kind of my opinion, because you can't, there's, hundreds of thousands of people around the planet working on this, right?
That's right. Yes. Yes. And then you mentioned about intuition, which reminds me of one of your podcasts on the cold shower.
Oh.
So do you want to tell us, because I found that fascinating what you shared on that podcast. So just tell us a bit about the benefits of having a cold shower.
Well, I think there's the physical benefits, which is, it looks like that because we spent so much time controlling our climate. So we're always indoors. We keep the temperature at the same for the winter and the summer. And most people say, oh, it's too cold to go out today. It's too hot to go out today. We've kind of lost the ability to regulate our own body temperature, which is connected to our nervous system, which is has a lot to do with stress. So I think what it seems like what the cold shower therapy does is by kind of shocking your body with the cold water, you're kind of, when you first do it the first day, you're like, well, am I crazy? This is awful. Why would I do this? But then every day, so like if you can only do it for 15 seconds, just turn the water cold all the way. Well, the next day you can do it for 20. And the next, you go up a little bit. And at the end of the month, you're like, wow, this isn't even cold anymore.
Wow.
So you've trained your body to handle stress. And it re-regulates your temperature. Like I don't worry about the hot and the cold as much. It doesn't feel, like animals, right? The rest of the creatures on the planet can do this.
Yes.
If you're a horse, it's 20 below zero in the winter. They don't freeze to death, right? They're okay. They know how to regulate their body temperature. And even humans in extreme climates, if you're up at the North Pole, if you're the Eskimos, they don't freeze to death and they have incredibly low temperatures. So, and then that's one part of it. I think it's just good for your physical body, but I think mentally, I know it sounds a little crazy, but it's for me, it's tells me like my mental condition, how calm I am, how like if I wake up in the morning and I feel stressed, that water's going to be cold and I don't even want to turn it to cold. It kind of teaches you over time. Like I know before I turn it, I've been doing it like 4 months now, and I do it every day. And I go, yeah, I think it's going to be kind of cold today because I've got some problems that are weighing on me. So it's almost like my test every day. And some days I'm like, yeah, this is fine. I could stay under here all day. It's just not cold.
Wow.
And then that's when I'm really calm. I'm really relaxed, and I'm really in this flow mode when I wake up, and I'm like, that's going to be a good day. And if I don't, it can tell me like, okay, you're not doing real good today. You're stressed. Maybe I need to go meditate for 15, 20 minutes before I go into work.
Wow.
Kind of readjust my system a little, and get rid of some of those thoughts, that stress.
That's fascinating. Well, Dave, I want to thank you. We've talked about business. We've talked about meditation, artificial intelligence, and cold showers. Again, you can check out Dave's podcast, Evolution Network, and there's going to be a link to that in the show notes. Any other means of how people can connect with you, Dave?
I think that's the best way. And there's a link in my description on my podcast episodes. If you want to talk to me about anything, about any of my episodes, or uh, contact me for a coaching session, you can click through on that link and send me your email address.
Brilliant. Well, I want to say thank you, Dave, for sharing your wisdom with us, your experience of running your own business. And also want to wish you every success with your podcast, Evolution Network. And for our audience, if you are enjoying this podcast, please subscribe, write a review. You can also go to my website, leadershipforstartups.com. You can engage with us there, download the checklist, 12 essential characteristics of successful entrepreneurs, so that you don't miss any of these practical tips that would help you be a better leader and you can grow your organization. I want to thank you for listening, and till next time, thank you. And thank you, Dave.
Well, thank you, Toy. It's been a pleasure to be on your show, and good luck to you too.
Welcome. And my audience, thank you, and to your success. Speak to you soon. Bye.